update you on some headlines around the women's sports world that maybe you haven't heard of or want to know a little bit more about. And then in the back half of the show, it's Cruton. It's Cruton. It's not going away. Well, maybe it is, but not for this week. You're still going to get your regular dose of Wednesday Cruton with none other than the director of recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Greg Powers. I sat down with him yesterday, and we talked a little bit about Texas Longhorns recruiting, so I hope that you will stay for that in the back half of the show. But first, let's talk a little bit more about this programming. Now, if you tuned into TFT on Monday or ROF yesterday, you heard Tepper talk a little bit about this new scheduling format that we're going to be doing. So I think Tepper put it in a really good way. He said, yes, we love doing Texas Football Today every single day. Yeah. I mean, that's his baby. That's your baby. Mm-hmm. You know, you guys love Texas Football Today. But he was like, we have so many more people on this staff now. Yeah. We're growing. We want to share this noon slot, these noon airways for our other talent and our other shows that have become popular as well. So very kind of him to say that. I think that we were all in agreement that that's probably the best way to go about this, at least as of right now. So just right now, what we're doing is on Mondays, you're still going to have Texas Football Today. Mm-hmm. Tuesdays at noon is the Republic of Football, our college football podcast featuring Ishmael Johnson, our host, Carter Yates, our college football insider, and then me. I will be producing that show. Wednesdays, hey, it's Women Talking Football with Ashley Pickle, Mallory Hartley, and Vianney Moreno, our beautiful producer over there. And then Thursdays, we're going back to Texas Football Today, so you'll still have your regular Texas Football Today stuff on Thursday with Ashley Pickle and Greg Tepper. And then Fridays is TBD.
Yeah, I think for the off season, if you will, for the rest of the summer, I think we're going to just be dark on Fridays. But heading into the season, as we started last year, Texas Football Tonight is our big NFL Red Zone type of show where we dive into all of the games that we have on TexanLive.com. That show is free. All of our games are subscriber based, so we hope that you'll take the chips and salsa and then go get the whole stinking enchilada after that. But I think, because I haven't been here to talk about the new show programming or anything like that, but you know, you're 100% right in the fact that, I mean, when Tepper and Max started Texas Football Today in 2015, that was the craziest new venture that the Dave Campbell's brand had gone on up to that point.
This brand had never been anything but just print media. Yeah. Right? It's never been, the video aspect of the media was not there. No. Right? And so, yeah, you're right. When Max Thompson came in and Greg Tepper, they created Texas Football Today. I almost said Texas Football Tonight because we were talking about it, but Texas Football Today. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this was a brand new venture for our company.
Right. And then obviously in 2019, I ended up taking over for Max. Actually now have surpassed the number of episodes that Max did, probably by over 100 or so at this point, which is just wild to think about. I mean, I've been doing it every day for the past 5 years, you know. But yeah, our staff has grown so much. There's so much content out there to be delivered through so many different devices that our biggest hope for this is for y'all to be able to come to TexasFootball.com, to YouTube, to Facebook every single day at noon and be guaranteed programming. You know, there are a lot of times we had to take off TFT because we're getting pulled in 17 different directions. There's so much stuff going. And it's funny to think about too, like when I first got hired, if I could not be there for a day, we did not have a show because there was not a single other person. Tepper every now and then could turn it on and run the programming, or even like Mailbag last year, he did a couple by himself. But it was like when I first started, if I wasn't here, we didn't have a show because there was not a single other person that knew how to run the computer. Right. And old girl, now new girl, and I just thought it was so cool when you got here and we were able to train you up on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can continue to give consistency to our viewers. That's huge because we want y'all to expect to know that on Wednesdays you can come in and there's always going to be a WTF. On Mondays you can come in, there's always going to be TFT. And now we have VNA who can also run the system. So we've got so many different hands. It's like, oh yeah, let's spread the wealth and get people in there. But I also hope that if you're new to this show specifically, it's different. Obviously, we're kind of the more relaxed show. We're not necessarily up at the desk. It's just 2-3 women talking football. But I hope that those of you who've watched TFT forever understand the wealth of knowledge that we have on this show about the actual X's and O's of the game. And if you're new here and have only ever seen TFT in the noon slot, I hope you'll stick around. Like she said, today we're not going to talk a whole lot of X's and O's. It's June 11th.
Yeah.
But when we get into the football, man, we dive deep into it. If you're looking for Texas high school football content, we can provide that to you. So I hope that you'll give us a shot and stick around, because I think we're pretty fun to listen to.
Yeah. Some may
Most
disagree.
people don't. Most people in our
office disagree about that, but I think we're personally fun to listen to. Maybe a little bias here.
We're the only two people in the studio, so whose else's opinion really matters?
No one's going to barge in here and tell us no.
No. Yeah.
Well, they might, but they're not going to. They'd have to yank us by the
I'm not leaving.
We're not leaving. But yeah, to continue that too, we also love having female guests on our show. I mean, we love having female sports reporters and sports directors around the state of Texas give their insight on different areas of high school football that they cover strictly. We love having female coaches on. We love having coaches' wives on. So
that's
if you're
where the real
listening
dirt
to
is.
this, oh yeah, we get some dirt on their husbands in there. It's so much fun. But yeah, if you know anybody that would be perfect for this show, let us know. We're always looking for people to hop on and to grow our network a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of what we're about, and we hope that you stick with us, and we'll tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. So
12.
Oh no, I did it. 12 p.m.
Take a drink.
I know, seriously.
There's the new drinking game for WTF. If you're looking for a nice little lunch cocktail, just let us know when you how many times we mess up this programming schedule.
Well, and it's crazy too that we're starting this today, because I sent you this last night, but literally 3 years ago today, back in 2021, is when you and I did a full week of Texas football today. You hosted and I produced it. Tepper was out on vacation, and you said, hey, why don't we just try this and see what happens? And we produced a full week of Texas football today, and that was the very first time that an all-female led show had ever been on the airways of Dave Campbell's Texas football.
Yeah, it was crazy. The photos are cool, and remembering back to the pride that we had in that week, because we were just going to cancel shows like you normally do.
Right.
Tepper's not here, just cancel the show.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait a minute, I think we can do this. Like, let's give it a shot. And then that's kind of what propelled us into convincing the powers that be that WTF was the right idea. And now here we are in episode number 69, still trying to prove to them that it's a good idea.
Episode 69 of WTF, man.
But yeah, 3 years
so
ago,
good.
we looked like babies in those photos too. We should have pulled them up. Maybe next episode we'll pull them up so everybody can see. But man, we looked like children.
Yeah, and you got us these cool sweatshirts that say women in sports, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And we were matching, and man, yeah, we look like babies, but how far we've come. I remember watching that back and going just watching you host that show. I was like, that seems very hard. Like, I don't know if I could do that. And here I am.
And here we are
hosting a show called our own show, actually. How far we've come. But yeah, we're super excited for this new programming schedule, and we hope that you like us enough to stick around every Wednesday at 12 p.m.
Ha-ha.
I got it that time. All right, shall we get into a couple of headlines here? We shall. Women's sports headlines. Let's start off with something that you sent me this morning. Sports Business Journal. Very familiar. Why are you familiar with Sports Business Journal?
I have been in their good graces before.
Have you? How?
Yes.
I'm curious. For these for the first time listeners here.
I was named to the Sports Business Journal's 30 under 30 list in 2022. So
where was the ceremony?
New York City. Very proud of that.
That's awesome. That's really
appreciate
cool.
SBJ. They do fantastic work.
So you have their notifications on.
Yes.
Twitter popped up all the time. And you sent me an article this morning. They had an innovation summit, leadership summit or something in Chicago recently, all about how women's sports are becoming vastly more popular during this time, which is very, very exciting. And they did so by talking about a couple of major companies that have already put so much investment into women's sports and equity in general. And one of the things that stood out to me the most was Ally Financial. They have really put almost all of their resources into making women's sports known, like their promotion of women's sports, through media. And one of the things I thought was really cool was they had a campaign started back in May of 2022, I believe, that they said they were going to invest as much money into men's sports as they do women's sports, which is really cool to me, I think. In turn, they ended up doing that. And then they also went on to challenge Disney Channel and ESPN to do the same to invest more into women's sports. And now it comes out that Verizon, a big company, they're also interested in investing in women's sports and the promotion of women's sports across the nation. I don't think they're there yet,
right?
But there is definitely interest. They want to be full in on this, which is super exciting.
Which I thought was very interesting when the representatives from Verizon had said, hey, look, we want to do this.
Yes.
But they made it incredibly clear that the reason that they haven't made that large financial investment in the same way that Allied Financial has was because, and I quote, we cannot half-ass this when we do it.
Right.
Which was such an interesting way to take a look at that, because basically what they were saying was, almost right now, investing in female sports, women's sports seems like the cool thing to do. Like, it kind of makes you one of those companies that it's like, oh,
hey, look, we're accepting of everybody, right? That kind of thing.
And it almost seems like a PR ploy for yourself, and you're doing it for those reasons rather than actually trying to help build up the economy of women's sports, which includes not only the financial investment, but mainly, like you were saying, the promotion of it, which is where the lack of financial equity is right now in women's sports, is because of the lack of promotion for it. But I just thought it was very interesting because they were like, so many people use it and do it because it's like, oh, the cool thing to do, and they throw a couple bucks at them, and then it's like, look, we're big supporters of the WNBA or of women's soccer or of this or that. They were like, no, if we're going to do this, we want the whole hog. We're going to go in and do it the right way to actually make a difference in the sport and continue to grow the sport, rather than doing it to say, we did it.
Right, exactly. And they've already made so many strides toward that. So one of the things I found interesting in the article about Ally Financial is that they bought in to the National Women's Soccer League's national championship. And they worked with CBS to up that game into the prime time spot. And that was the first time that had ever happened. And proof of concept here, that was the most watched match in the history of the league. So it's working.
Yeah.
If you just invest in women's sports, it's working,
yep.
And all of this talk about Caitlin Clark, I think that has definitely added to this a lot, but it's not just Caitlin Clark. I mean, we were talking about the College World Series for softball before this, and how popular that was. Right. I mean, we know that Oklahoma is probably the dominant team
they are
in college softball.
Patty
right?
Gasso is Jesus reincarnated as a softball coach.
Correct. But I did see something that this was a very well viewed program, very well viewed sports. So it is helping. Like, there are people out there. There are big companies like Verizon and Ally Financial and Disney that are willing to invest in women's sports. And I think it's working. It's really exciting. I mean, go back to March Madness this year for women's sports. I mean, that was one of the most viewed programs in the history of college basketball for women.
Well, and I think that that's the biggest thing too, is that what all of this has shown to me over the past couple of years with the emergence of women's sports, with the especially where from college basketball, now all of those players transferring over to the WNBA. Right. The thing there is that people like competition. It does not matter what the competition is. It does not matter who is playing the competition. I think it's that college softball is an interesting sample size to look at, because Oklahoma has been so dominant for so many years. This year alone was one of the worst teams that they've had in the past few years, and they still won. Right. So the viewership number on that is not near as good as the basketball national championships were the past 2 years, because it was genuinely getting to the point where, yes, superstars help that, but then too, it is competitive, and just the financial backing of these companies that needs to be there is because then they can promote it and say, no, look at this competition, because I don't care who you are. If the competition is good, the interest will follow. Right. Holly Rowe always tweets it out, build it and they will come. And that's exactly what it is. It's just that the competition has been good. The competition, in my mind, is getting even better, which is helpful. But if you have the financial backing to be able to promote that competition, people will absolutely watch it, because fundamentally sports fans we're all built the same. All we want is a good show.
Right.
You know, you give us a good show and we're going to watch it.
Right. Well, and I think this comes at a really good time too. The fact that women's sports is really, the viewership is at an all-time high, because you know what's happening this summer in July is the Summer Olympics.
Which rock. Big Olympics fans.
Are you more of a summer or winter Olympics gal?
I like summer better.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. And that's for one reason, and I'm about to talk about that one reason. So I think we can argue here maybe a little bit, but I think that the most popular sport in the Summer Olympics is gymnastics.
Yeah.
Women's, I should clarify, women's gymnastics.
I agree.
I think you could probably argue men's basketball a little bit. It kind of just depends on probably who's playing on the team at that time.
Swimming.
I think is very popular.
But again, a lot of that has to do with the stardom.
Correct.
Michael Phelps, Katie
Ledecky.
Ledecky.
Correct.
When you go to gymnastics has always been popular. But when did it boom? When Simone Biles got in there.
Right. Well, I also think too that sport's just very different than like all the other sports. I think it's just an interesting sport in general, but also yes, when Simone Biles started getting all these media deals and all of the eyes of the nation were on her, exactly, it started to boom. So that kind of just proves my point there that build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting too, because you look at we talked about this a little bit too, but you look at the the basketball team just got announced for the Olympics. And there has been so much debate going on about whether or not Caitlin Clark should have been left off or should not have been left off. And I think that I am totally willing to have that debate. That's not the point that I'm getting at. The point that I'm getting at is this is a stark reminder that there are so many good WNBA players that are represented on that list that you've almost forgot about, because all that you've heard about has been Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, no. Let's go back and take a look at Kelsey Plum and that she's still destroying people.
Breanna Stewart.
Breanna Stewart. Let's look at Brittany Griner. All of them. And it was almost refreshing to me in the fact of going, man, there's still some really good talent in the WNBA.
Yes.
Not to mention half of them have children.
I know.
Mama's just going to go hoop for a second and go win a gold medal. It's just, it is a very good time for it to be doing that. But I think it was also a good reminder of not just the new emergence of this, but that those are the women that have been battling against this for so long. And
they're finally seeing.
They deserve the respect.
They're finally seeing the respect for it, for building it. Yes, correct. Very correct on that. And not to mention, it's during the WNBA season, which is always just crazy to me. You know, like they're not only taking time off from their kids, but they're also taking time off from their actual full-time job, which is playing in the WNBA. So it's very respectable. Excited to watch that. Well, finally, let's go ahead and end on a fun little topic. There was a new sports bar that was opened up in Long Beach, California this week. And all women's sports bars. So it's called Watch Me, which is, I think, really interesting here. The name is in reference to how women athletes often have to prove themselves by showing doubters what they can do, which I think is really, really cool. Two women are the ones that started this bar in California. And they're showing 95% women's sports.
That's awesome.
And only 5% men's sports. Yeah. So, of course, they're going to still show the Dodgers. They're going to still show Lakers games.
Oh, yeah, the locals.
Right. And you brought up a good point earlier, is that there just are more men professional sports than women's professional sports.
Yeah, so there are points in the year where there's not as much content, at least from a daily perspective, to be able to entice people to come into a sports bar and the TVs are turned off.
Correct.
You know, like...
Right. So I thought that was really cool. That's the first bar like it in the entire state. Now, there's a couple of others that have been popping up around the United States. There's one in Oregon that you had mentioned called the Sports Bra, which is so cool. I think we need to take a trip up to Oregon just so we can go.
For research purposes, for science.
No, this is a work trip.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, for science.
Oh, right. Yes. And then we're going to come back and then we're going to open up our own.
See, that's okay. Yes, because that's what I was going to say. I was like, WTF is what started off as a podcast is absolutely, Ben and Skin did that from their time on The Fan, and then now they have Rollertown Brewing. Like, We're thinking about things, people.
I
Innovation.
I
live.
love when we just go off on topics like this. We do this a lot. If you're new here to Women Talking Football, we love to produce on the fly. We're both producer minded because I'm the associate producer. She's the executive producer. So we're always just thinking about things and producing on the fly. So when stuff like this happens, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It gets our juices flowing.
Currently associate producer and executive producer, but future bar owners. V&A, are you in on this? Are we opening up a bar?
I'm all for it. I will writing everything down right now.
Okay.
I
that's
love
why
this.
That's why we keep her around.
Yeah, that's why we pay her the big bucks.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
WTF bar coming soon, following the 69th episode.
It was created. The idea was born on the 69th episode of WTF.
What if it's like also a bar and coffee? Maybe we could throw some coffee.
I like that. A coffee wine bar.
I do. Yeah,
Coffee
I am
wine
a big
bar.
fan of that.
Coffee, wine, and
Coffee
women's
in the
sports
morning.
bar. Yep. That's
Wake
it.
up
There we go.
and stay all day.
Yep.
That's it. That's it right
This
there.
is it, guys.
Well, guys, on that note, there's your news and headlines in women's sports in today's world. So yeah, that was. We are Women Talking Football. We're here every Wednesday at noon talking football and all things women's sports. This is episode 69. Nice of WTF, and we're so glad you're here. If this is your first time tuning in, up next.